And we are live. I'll give us just a second. Hopefully this week, I don't have any problems with the video freezing up like it did last week. We'll see. I forgot to turn the Wi-Fi off on the thing here. So, but this time I did. I'm off of my house Wi-Fi, so that should fix it, hopefully. But this week's episode is brought to you by Deep Roots Rifle Company. Elevated excellence rooted in integrity and reliability. Use the link in the description to get over to their website and order just about everything you'll need to get into the woods this fall. From a fully custom rifle built in-house to flashlights to help you find your way in the dark, and be sure to use code UPO10 at checkout for 10% off your order. Man, we sat in here last week with Peter, which this is a little like insight into the podcast world for a minute. We sat in here last week with Peter from Deep Roots Rifle Company, and that show will be the first. We recorded it the week of Thanksgiving, and it will be the first episode of season 7. So it won't even come out till after the first of the year. Like the 4th of January, I think, something like that, right? 4th or 5th, something like that. It's the first Monday in January. But dude, and when I talk about there's everything on that website, I clicked on shop all and I was on page 1 of like 800 and something. Holy cow. You can burn a whole 8-hour day going through there. It's like digging through it is the online version of the old Cabela's catalogs you used to leave next to the toilet that were like an inch and a half thick. You know, you could roll them up and use them to kill armadillos, for Pete's sake. Those things are so thick and heavy, but their website has everything on it. And you can start putting your custom rifle together in their custom rifle builder across several different tiers. But right now, they still got that Staccato P pistol. And there are less than 30 seats left. So click on the link in the podcast description, grab you a couple seats to the webinar, and maybe you'll get lucky and walk away with that pistol when the webinar is over. But you don't have to be present to walk away with it. So see how that goes. But if you guys follow our social media this week, you saw that, we spent a little time. I took the boy out, and we indulged in the Southern tradition of running deer with dogs, and it's fun. I don't have dogs, and that's not my preferred method with which to chase whitetail deer, but man, it is fun. I did it when I was younger. I ran with some. My dad ran when I was a little kid. Ran dogs when I was a little kid. Then he started still hunting. And then when I was in high school, I had buddies that did, and I'd go and run with them in the same areas we ran over the weekend, which was awesome and a lot of fun. And my son had fun. It's exciting. So this week we're going to talk about the history of the hunting dog. So we'll jump into that. Since the very, very beginning of our species, ever since humans first sharpened stones into tools and stared out across the wild horizons, there's been another creature walking right beside us. Not behind us, not beneath us, but beside us. The dog. So today we're diving into the oldest, most fascinating partnership in human history. Man hunting with dogs. We're going to travel through thousands of years back in time into frozen mammoth country, through the deserts of ancient kingdoms, across medieval forests, frozen or frontier mountains, and right up to present day. And we're going to look at how the relationship didn't just change hunting, it changed us. This is the story of humans and dogs, hunting partners since before history was even written. So the origins of the partnership. Long before agriculture, long before metal tools, long before any kingdom or civilization existed, we now know, thanks to archaeological genetic evidence, that dogs were likely domesticated somewhere according to science, 20 to 40,000 years ago, if that's what you believe. That makes dogs the oldest domesticated animal in human history. Older than goats, older than cattle, older than horses. But why did wolves and humans link up in the first place? That is the question, right? So you imagine a world where humans lived in small tribes, mostly nomadic, moving across ice age landscapes full of giant animals, wolves that were slightly less fearful and more curious. They had no reason to be fearful at that time, right? Would hang around human camps to scavenge, because that's really what they are, is scavengers, primarily. Over time, the bold ones survived by staying close, and humans tolerated them because they were useful, alerting the camp to danger, eating scraps, maybe even helping track wounded animals. The slow partnership grew until eventually these wolves were no longer wolves. They were the earliest dogs. And we have early visual proof of them working with humans in Saudi Arabia. There are about 8,000 to 9,000-year-old rock carvings that show hunters, bows drawn, accompanied by dogs, on leashes. That's the oldest depiction of dogs deliberately controlled and used for hunting. It's not a guess. It's carved in stone, quite literally. There are also cave paintings in North Africa, Algeria's Tassili in Asia. I probably pronounced that wrong. Spelled it right, copy and pasted it. But definitely probably said it wrong. Showing dogs circling game animals, flanking them, and pushing them. So from the very earliest records, humans weren't just hanging out with dogs, they were hunting with them. Ancient civilizations and their hunting dogs, as soon as these civilizations began forming, we start seeing specialized hunting dogs from specialized hunting dogs mentioned in writing, carved into monuments, and buried with their owners. So we jump into Mesopotamia, the land of clay tablets, and the first cities, and their texts describe dogs used to track gazelles and even lions. The Assyrians carved detailed bas reliefs of huge, massive type dogs holding lions at bay during royal hunts. They weren't pets. These were powerful, trained hunters working for kings. Then there's ancient Egypt, where hunting dogs held almost sacred status. The Egyptians loved their Seleucid-type sight hounds, long-legged and built for speed. These dogs chased gazelles, hares, and even ran alongside chariots. Some were mummified with the same care as humans, complete with collars bearing their names, and that's how important they were. Meanwhile, over in Greece, the philosopher Xenophon wrote Synergeticus, I think I'm saying that correctly, the older surviving hunting manual in the Western world. And what's it about? Dogs. How to raise them, how to train them, how to hunt with them. And that was around 2,400 years ago. So the Romans took things a step further, and they developed boar hunting dogs. Big, muscular breeds, sometimes fitted with early armor or spiked collars, because boars were just as mean then as they are now. You still see it a lot with guys that hunt pigs with dogs now. It's a lot of Kevlar armor. Try and keep the dogs safe. And in Asia, hunting dogs were used everywhere from China to Mongolia. Some tribes combined dogs with birds of prey. Imagine a falcon overhead with a dog on the ground working the same quarry. That's not just hunting. That's a coordinated system, thousands of years old. So by this time, the bond between humans and dogs was so strong and so practical that no culture on Earth ignored it. So as the world moved into the Middle Ages, the relationship between hunting dogs took on new shapes. Hunting in medieval Europe wasn't just food, it was culture. Ceremony, and dogs became even more specialized. This era is really where the foundations of modern dog types were set. If you walked into a medieval noble's kennel, you'd see prototypes of today's scent hounds. Big, deep voiced dogs trained to track deer, boar, and fox by smell. You'd also see sleek sight hounds, ancestors of today's greyhounds, used to chase game across open fields. And the paperwork of the time reflects this too. A famous English work from the 14th century, The Master of Game, reads like a training manual. It covers pack hierarchy, breeding techniques, how to bandage wounds, and even how to talk to your hounds during the chase. It's also the time when laws started controlling who could own hunting dogs. In some regions, only nobles were allowed to own certain breeds. Dogs were valuable. They were hunting technology. Picture a medieval forest at dawn, the horns blast, the shouts of the huntsman, and a pack of hounds opening up in a full cry as they hit the scent of a stag. That sound, that scene hasn't changed in hundreds of years. We were listening to it Sunday morning on the radio. There's no more horns, but it's connected via CB radio and Garmin tracking collars. The game has changed. The game has changed drastically from this weekend from when I had gone 20 years ago. So as Europeans spread across the world, they brought their dogs with them. And those dogs adapted to new lands just like the people did. In North America, early settlers needed dogs capable of doing everything: tracking, treeing, guarding, flushing, even hauling. Over time, these mixed working dogs gave rise to uniquely American types: curs and hounds, perfectly suited for frontier life. These dogs took on some serious game: black bear, mountain lion, raccoons, deer, wild hogs, and anything else that put food on the table. Meanwhile, Native American tribes also used dogs long before Europeans' arrival. Some had small hunting dogs used to flush game from brush or track wounded animals. After European contacts, many tribes blended their knowledge with the abilities of new dog breeds, leading to even more specialized hunting roles. As settlers pushed into the Appalachians and the Ozarks and the Rockies, wherever they went, dogs were essential. If a pioneer family didn't have dogs, they were at a disadvantage. Fast forward to the American South, where we're at now, and you see one of the strongest hunting with dog traditions still alive today. Dogs track, bay, and sometimes catch feral hogs using the same instinct teamwork humans relied on thousands of years ago. And in the West, hounds became more critical for managing mountain lion and bear populations. Those hunts still rely on human-dog partnership unlike anything else. Long hours on steep mountains, and trusting a dog's nose to tell you what's ahead. Modern hunting dogs are the most specialized they've ever been, but they're still doing the same ancient jobs: finding game, chasing game, retrieving game, and communicating with us. So let's touch on the main categories, not prioritizing any one style. Just appreciate the diversity. You got scent hounds. These are your cold trailers and hot trailers. Hounds that can follow a deer track hours old, bears across mountain ridges, a rabbit through a bush, or a raccoon to a tree. They use their noses like ancient tracking dogs carved on the cave walls. Those are probably some of what they're so fun to watch, or so fun to, I say watch, listen to. Those are the dogs you're listening to. Your bird dogs are the fun ones to watch. Pointers, setters, flushers, and versatile European breeds. They locate upland birds by scent, freeze into a point, and hold steady until the hunter arrives. That intense point is a trait we humans bred into them over centuries, and it's such a beautiful thing to see. So beautiful. I would say retrievers anymore are probably the most common type of hunting dog. For waterfowl hunters, a good retriever is priceless. These dogs mark ducks and geese as they fall, memorize multiple locations, and run blind retrieves and handle hand signals and whistles They're athletes and problem solvers. And a good retriever could be the difference in having a limit and not having a limit of ducks, because they can find the ones that kind of get away, catching a wounded bird or getting off in the mud and stuff and digging them out of the bushes. You got hog dogs, which is a big thing down here in the South. Bay dogs locate pigs and hold them in place with bark, while catch dogs, often outfitted with protective vests, move in to control the hog. This system is ancient. It's just refined with modern gear. And sight hounds, fast, lean, and built for visual pursuit. Some regions still legally use them for running hares or coyotes, much like ancient Egyptians did thousands of years ago. And I would encourage you guys, if you haven't watched them do that on YouTube, hunting coyotes with dogs, dude, it's the coolest thing in the world. Look that up. And you got versatile dogs. Breeds like the Drotthires and Griffins and Poodle pointers combine tracking, pointing, and retrieving. These are the Swiss Army knives of the dog world. That's where you have the groups like NADNA, the National Versatile Hunting Dog Association. Training has evolved too. We now have GPS collars, the e-collars with tone and vibrate modes, detailed training programs, and specialized competitions. But the core of training, bonding, consistency, reward, is the same as it was 10,000 years ago. Now let's talk about something deeper. The cultural and emotional connection between hunters and their dogs. I saw multiple times over this weekend, you think, and it's easy to look from the outside perspective and say, oh, when that dog gets old, it's useless. There are these guys out there with these old dogs that are 12, 14 years old, and they're not hunting anymore. But these dogs are still geared up, just like the rest of them, ready to go run some deer, and that dog rides in the truck. And sometimes they get out and they trail around kind of slow. Those dogs just want to hunt, but they're still out there because they love those dogs. And they're hands down, they love those dogs. Selective breeding shaped dogs for hunting, but hunting also shaped the dogs. Think about the instincts hunters rely on: pointing, retrieving, baying, trailing, holding a line. These aren't random. They're instincts, refined generation after generations by hunters who value certain traits. And the bond we form with them is real, scientifically real. Studies show that when a dog makes eye contact with its owner, both release oxytocin, the same hormone involved in parent-child bonding that tells you something about this partnership. It's not just utility, it's emotional. Over time, hunters built entire traditions around their dogs. Blessing of the hounds, naming rituals, the first hunt a young dog ever goes on, the bittersweet moment of retiring an old dog, the way we honor them after they're gone. Ask any hunter who uses dogs consistently, and they'll tell you the dogs aren't tools. They're teammates. Some would even say family. Of course, hunting with dogs in the modern era isn't without controversy. Some regions have tightened or banned certain practices, like running deer with hounds. That's only a few states left, primarily across the South, that allow that. Coursing game or using catch dogs for hogs. Critics often misunderstand how the methods work or assume they're harmful to wildlife. But on the flip side, dogs are increasingly recognized as a critical conservation tool. They help track wounded deer for ethical recovery. They help control invasive species like feral hogs. And wildlife researchers use dogs to locate endangered species, track predators, and gather data. And with all that, regulations continue to evolve. Like I said earlier, back when close to 20 years ago, when I would run dogs with guys out of high school, they were using what was called telemetry collars. And back in that time, This was it's just using radio signal. And you hold this collar up, and you still see them used in like field biology work and things like that for when they put a tracking collar on a deer or a bear or whatever else. And they're going to take that thing and they'll hold around as you get closer to it, closer to pointing at, whatever where the signal's coming from. It's beeping the whole time, and it's faint. It's beep, 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 beep. And it gets, as you point towards it, it gets louder. And the closer you get to it, it should start beeping faster. So it's going to give you a direction. And then as you get closer, or maybe there's indicators when you're pointed in the right direction when you're getting closer to your dog. Back in that day, at that time, it used to be you'd drop a pack of hounds here, and then they'd run a deer, and then you go drop a pack of hounds there, and they'd run a deer, and drop a pack of hounds here, and they'd run a deer, and then we'd spend the rest of the day trying to catch dogs. Now, and even then, they had the lost dog pen. So there were pens all across the forest that were maintained by hunters and everything else who would come and leave water and food and whatever else. And if you found a dog, didn't know whose dog it was, didn't have a collar. At that time, they were either wearing the telemetry collars, or they're wearing a collar with the hunter's name and phone number on it. And then, if they didn't have that, sometimes get caught in the bushes or whatever comes off, collar breaks, you put them in the lost dog pen. And you could come by on a daily basis or whatever and check the lost dog pen to see if your dog had showed up in there. You can collect your dog back up. We all looked out for each other. Those things went away. The lost dog pens went away when the tracking collars became a thing. Because I watched these guys. It's the first time I've ever hunted deer with dogs since they made that a law that they had to have the collars with the tracking and the recall function and all that. And these guys are dropping dogs in a block, and they're running deer. And then, typically down here in Florida, we can't shoot does, so you got to shoot a buck. So it turns out doe crosses the road in front of the dogs. And then when I was a kid, man, it was a mad scramble to catch the dogs as fast as you could so that we could get them on something else. But now the doe crosses the road and everybody starts calling dogs back with the collar, and they're back in the truck. You don't spend all that time chasing dogs anymore. You're actually doing a lot more hunting a deer, and then you pick up, somebody else lets another pack loose somewhere, and they're all tracking it, and everybody is tracking everybody's dogs. You can see where the dogs are going. It's safer for the dogs. It's safer for the hunters, and it makes things run a little more smoothly. And that was regulations that hunters push for. It helps keep dogs off private land so you know when they're going, because sometimes it's hard to tell which direction the dogs are running just by listening to the bark. But it's really neat technology. Things ran a lot smoother. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed watching the dance. And we did. They did kill a nice little scrub buck when he's up there. So that was good. Congratulations, Eddie. Beautiful little buck. But so, like I said, those regulations continue to evolve. The GPS tracking rules, leash laws, seasons for running dogs, and private property concerns. And hunters who use dogs have to be more aware than ever of local laws. It's a balancing act, preserving ancient traditions, adapting to modern expectations, and proving that hunting with dogs can be ethical, responsible, and beneficial. It's like going out, hunting snipe, man. It is so much easier. I would say it's easier to hunt them with a dog as much as it's easier to gather what you kill with a dog, because those little birds are already hard to spot. And then you flush them up and kill one, they're even harder to find once they're dead. You think about how hard a dove is to find when it's dead on the ground. And these little birds are designed to just blend in, completely disappear. It's 10 times harder to hunt quail when you don't have a dog. Ducks is not as easy to do. Ducks on a lake down here, and there's still places down here where, even guys that have dogs won't run dogs because of alligators. So ducks just sit on the water. Ducks float when you shoot them, and they're dead. So, and I've seen guys using, topwater plugs to snag ducks and bring them back to the boat. But when they sit out there, you get caught by the tax man. The tax man's either an alligator or an eagle. Either one of them will steal your ducks. and those still count against your limit. Uh, but you got to feed the tax man. But running dogs, especially if you're in an area, duck hunting in a spot with a little bit of current where your birds are going to float away, that's very helpful to be able to send a dog out to retrieve it, bring it back. When you got wounded birds, the dog can go get it and bring it back. Um, but yeah, so in conclusion, uh, thousands of years after the first hunter shared a fire with the first dog bold enough to walk into the light, that early partnership grew into something that shaped human history. Dogs made us better hunters, better trackers, better survivors, and in return, we shaped them into the incredible animals we know today. From Paleolithic spear hunters stalking primitive game to Egyptian chariots racing across desert sands, although at that time Egypt was a little greener than it is, a lot more wet and less desert, to medieval hounds echoing through royal forests, to frontier hunters in America relying on a good dog to feed a family, to the upland hunter today watching a bird dog lock up on point. The partnership hasn't faded. It's still alive. It's still thriving. Dogs aren't just part of hunting's past. They're part of its present and absolutely part of its future. As long as humans continue to hunt, whether with a bow, a rifle, or a shotgun, dogs will be right there beside us, doing what they've done since the dawn of our species, working with us, helping us, and forming a bond unlike anything else in the natural world. So, thank you all for joining me for this one. It's been fun. Um, that's it for history of humans and dogs and the incredible partnership that continues to define both species. I got a couple of old dogs ain't worth squat for hunting, but they're getting up there. That'll be the end of them. And it's sad. Dogs become part of the family. Whether they just a bunch of biscuit eaters or they actually work for their food, but it is good. We'll catch you guys next week. Have a good night.